is Disney World for Dummies. Everyone keeps talking about Lightning Lane this, Lightning Lane that. They talk about the most wild tips. It feels like they're speaking another language. I understand.
$209. One ticket, one day, Magic Kingdom. That number went live in 2026, and Bob Iger, Disney's chief executive officer, called it a tremendous value. The earnings report tells a different story. Here's the part Iger doesn't want you calculating. For the first time in history, a single-day Disney ticket has broken the $200 barrier. $209. Not for a week, not for a resort package. One day, one park, one entry. That is not the ceiling of a premium experience. That is the floor of the trap. The base ticket is not the bill. It's the entry fee to a system designed to extract far more from the moment you walk through the gate. On top of admission, Lightning Lane Premier Pass peaks at $449 per person, per day, on top of what you already paid. That's not a convenience upgrade. That is the cost of not standing in a 90-minute line that guests and analysts report has grown as Disney scaled back staffing and operating hours at its parks. And here's where it gets worse. Reports from guests and analysts indicate Disney reduced staffing levels and operating hours at Magic Kingdom, conditions that drove wait times higher during peak periods. Fewer cast members, longer lines, more guests with no option but to pay for Lightning Lane to make the day workable. But what Iger's team calls capacity optimization actually means conditions that push guests toward a $449 solution. The IncrediPass, Walt Disney World's top-tier annual pass, now costs $1,629. That is after an $80 hike from last year. The guests most loyal to Disney are the ones being asked to pay the most to stay loyal. That is not accidental. That is the architecture, built deliberately, layer by layer. You're under one leadership tenure. Imagine you're a family of 4 planning your first Disney trip in 3 years. You budgeted carefully for base tickets. You arrive at 9 in the morning. Wait times are already 90 minutes at the most popular rides. You ask about Lightning Lane. $449 per adult, per day, on top of admission. You walk away at the end of the day with one memory, standing in lines while the park around you moved at full price. Under Iger's watch, that outcome is not a service failure. It's a segment that didn't convert. Now let's go to the receipts, because the numbers behind this system are entirely public record. Disney's published ticket calendar is receipt 1. On paper, Disney tripled the number of low-price calendar dates available to guests. On paper. In practice, per capita guest spending at domestic parks still rose 4%, per Disney's own Q1 2026 earnings report. What that means for you: they gave you more cheap-looking days, and guests still ended up spending more per visit inside those days. On food, beverage, and parking. Parking is now $35 per day for standard. That used to be absorbed into the broader expectation of a full park experience. Now it is a line item with its own charge. That is not the end of it. Receipt 2 is the earnings report. Disney's Q1 2026 financial results, released in February 2026, showed total company segment operating income declining 9% year over year to $4.6 billion. A significant portion of that decline came from a carriage dispute with YouTube TV, which Disney's own earnings commentary confirmed reduced revenue, a direct case of consumers exercising an alternative when they had one. Park guests mostly do not have that option. Receipt 3 is the one Iger has not addressed publicly. Disney's Disability Access Service was significantly overhauled in 2024 and 2025, narrowing eligibility for guests who cannot tolerate standard queue environments. What Iger's team calls a necessary update to address program misuse actually means guests who previously had a free accommodation were redirected toward Lightning Lane instead. The hidden catch: DAS restriction didn't only affect disabled guests, it funneled a broader population of park visitors directly into the paid upgrade system. Let me say that again. Disney restricted free disability access, then pointed affected guests toward the paid skip-the-line product as the available path forward. The institutional record of this is now on Disney's own proxy ballot. A shareholder proposal filed by shareholder Eric G. Paul urges Disney to commission an independent third-party review of the DAS overhaul, examining legal, financial, and reputational risks. Shareholders vote on it at Disney's annual general meeting on March 18, 2026. Disney's board is recommending shareholders vote against the review. That recommendation is now formally documented in the proxy statement. Picture this scenario. You're a parent of a child with a disability. You relied on DAS for every previous Disney trip. You're told eligibility has changed. Lightning Lane is the path offered to your family now. Your budget did not include $449 per person on top of admission. That's not a hypothetical edge case. That's the direct, documented consequence of the policy Iger's tenure produced, and it goes on a ballot on March 18th. Now watch what happens next. Here is the mechanism in exact order. 5 layers, each profitable. Disney reduces operational capacity, fewer staff, shorter hours, particularly at Magic Kingdom. Wait times climb, 60, 90 minutes and beyond, documented regularly during peak periods. Disney offers Lightning Lane as the solution. The real cost is $449 per person per day, to avoid lines that grew as the park pulled back on staffing. Disney reclassifies the pricing calendar. More value days appear on the website, but per capita guest spending still rose 4%, through food, beverage, and parking increases felt across every visit. DAS eligibility narrows. More guests funnel into Lightning Lane. A free accommodation disappears. A premium revenue line expands in its place. The IncrediPass absorbs an $80 increase. Disney's most loyal, most frequent guests pay the highest entry cost to maintain access year over year. Here's what that actually does to the system. It becomes self-reinforcing. Higher prices reduce casual visits. Fewer casual visits create internal justification for premium-only pricing. Premium pricing rises to match that narrative. Imagine you're a Disney annual pass holder. $1,629 for the IncrediPass this year, $80 more than the year before. Same number of planned visits. Meanwhile, Iger's fiscal 2024 total compensation was confirmed at $41.1 million in Disney's own proxy filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission. The math on who absorbs the cost of this system is visible to anyone who reads the public filings. The gap nobody talks about. Disney created the wait time problem, built a product to solve it, then charged $449 for that product. That is not dynamic pricing responding to demand. That is a loop that manufactures the problem and charges for the exit. Here is Disney's public response to all of it. Iger's investor commentary included this direct quote: "Consumer demand for our parks and resorts product is extremely high. The value, in fact, is tremendous, particularly when you compare it with other forms of entertainment like sporting events and concerts." What that framing actually does, it moves the goalposts. Disney is no longer competing against a family vacation budget. It is comparing itself to stadium pricing. The hidden catch: a concert ends in 3 hours and doesn't require a $35 parking charge, a $449 line skip, and a $209 gate ticket just to enter. The comparison collapses under the math. One factual note: Disney's Q1 2026 Experiences segment showed domestic park attendance up 1% year over year and segment revenue hitting a record $10 billion. The company is not failing. The pricing system is working for the balance sheet. What it is not doing is working for the families standing in those 90-minute lines. That distinction is exactly what the shareholder proposal forces into daylight. The DAS vote is March 18th. Disney's board is against it. Shareholders decide whether an independent risk assessment actually happens. Iger's exit from the chief executive role is now documented. Josh D'Amaro, named CEO successor in February 2026, inherits this entire pricing architecture. D'Amaro has not broken from the dynamic pricing defense. He now owns every number attached to it from the day he takes the chair. $209 to enter, $449 to skip the line, $35 to park the car. The value Iger describes is not the bill that families receive. The mechanism is built. The receipts are filed. The vote is days away. And the math Iger is leaving behind is now tomorrow's to answer for. Watch what he does with it on his first earnings call.